Hello, hello. So, in traffic and thinking about this concept of keeping your calm in the storm, there is, I speak a lot about that with like let it all crumble, trying to be okay when things around you aren't the way you want them to be, but still have a sense of peace. But I just went through something today and it was really hard. It was one of those moments where it was incredibly difficult. I got super triggered and in reality didn't end up having the self-control to keep my mouth shut. Now, what I'm not sure about is if I had kept my mouth shut, would things have been entirely different? Maybe. Did I sort of so was that my own sort of sin? Did I have to sort of face the consequences of that with what ensued after? Or was this one of those setups that was supposed to happen because I had things in me that needed to come to the surface? And mainly it was a lot of anger that I haven't been looking at. It was there when I look back now. I can see how there was moments where I could have recognized that I was having some anger come up about a particular issue, but I really thought I had it under control, I guess. But in this moment, either I had a lack of self-control and I let the emotions take over, or it was meant to happen so that I would face something that I wasn't wanting to face. I guess two could actually be the same thing, because maybe part of self-control means being honest with ourselves and dealing with these things before they get before you walk into a situation with what felt like the perfect setup to be triggered, and I fell for it. And that's why it was very hard. And when I did that, I regained within it was like maybe 1 or 2 minutes of going down a rabbit hole, not like really losing my temper, but standing up for myself in a situation that I know better than to stand up for myself. Because even though I think it was warranted, and this is another way we get baited into things, right? It was warranted that I stand up for myself, but in reality, given the situation, it won't really do any good. It's not really strategically the best option to do that in this particular circumstance. So, and I knew that going in, and yet I still ended up doing exactly that. This also brings in this idea of like when we try to use our self-control and our discipline, and then we just yo-yo back the other way, which does actually seem to be part of the human condition. Something I'm doing as well. It's like you try so hard to stay off of something for your health, and you actually do really good at it, and you feel great and self-righteous, and then you fall off, and then you actually go all the way the other extreme, and you have to really sit with it and recognize that I yo-yo, like, is it possible to really walk the line? Like, how does this work? And I guess that's where Jesus comes in, and the idea that, you're in the human condition and you do have to accept whatever happens, including in my case, when you don't have self-control, right? You have to even accept that and not go to a place of berating yourself or beating yourself up, because that is going to disempower you and that's going to pull you off your path. So you have to immediately accept whatever's in front of you, that's the game, and then try to get past it. Now, in my particular situation, it took me and I'm still not over it, but I'm going to say, how many hours is it now? Almost 6 hours of just physical, emotional, this was a deep one. Let's put it that way. Like, I feel sick to my stomach. This gets at the heart of some super core issues for me. And so I was trying to be appreciative, because in reality, if I really look at it, even though the day didn't go the way I wanted, if it was a day that was meant to be spent bringing this to the light of consciousness and recognizing I have this in me, recognizing I have a hatred and a bitterness in me that has to be brought to God. Because any bitterness, any resentment, any of that we hold on to, it's not about the other person. We might be justified, and we might not be. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you clear it, because that is a definite, doorway in for manipulation and influence, and being controlled from dark forces if you are holding on to something like that. And I have to admit that now. And maybe if I had had more self-control today, that would have just gotten me another day, but I wouldn't have been humbled to the point of recognizing that I can be controlled, because I do have a lot of hatred in me regarding a certain scenario. And I felt miserable feeling this. It felt absolutely terrible, and it was in the middle of what was supposed to be a wonderful, relaxing day. Now, the wonderful, relaxing part of the day did enable me to just be with it, and it was easier than maybe getting triggered like that and then having to work or teach or, do something. But sometimes that I snap out of it even quicker when I'm serving other people. Serving other people or thinking other people can be sometimes a good way to pop out of it, but also sometimes you're just stuffing it back down and you're not dealing with it. The day I had forced me to really sit with it, and I have been, and I still am. And I was able to release and really get to the bottom of some things I'm feeling. Now, I don't know what it means for my life, but all through this, I have been able to anchor in and just pray to the power of Jesus in my life to bring these things to the light and to have them get healed. And that is the work. I wanted to talk about this from a raw place because that is the work. I was so triggered, for the most part, I couldn't sing. I was also so triggered that in reality, I didn't even want to drink, even though that was actually an option. And sometimes that is very tempting when you're that triggered to just numb out. And sometimes that's what you have to do, right? Sometimes you just can't, you have to take the edge off. Whatever you're experiencing is that bad. But when possible, you want to be able to go through the thick of it, and you want to have Jesus right there with you. And you want to have the faith that by doing that that's all you need to do, that you can accept the reality of whatever's going to come from what feels like, something that's spun out of your control. Or in my case, there was also a lot of guilt and anger. But it wasn't just guilt and anger that particular day, that if I had just kept my mouth shut, if I had been more self-controlled, then everything would have been fine. But the truth is that's not true. And I could have beaten myself up way more with that thought. It was there. It was pretty prominent. Like, you ruined the day for everybody, and you should have just kept your mouth shut. But all that is also coming from a place that I'm trying to look at, a codependent place, that I'm the one who picks up the slack every time, everywhere. That I'm the one that has to get it right. That I have this expectation on myself, and it's not a fair standard, and it's not being applied to the people around me. And that's part of what I'm rebelling against. I'm rebelling against the fact that it feels like I'm in certain enmeshed situations where I'm expected to pick up the slack. I'm expected to be the bigger person all the time. And it's just not fair, because I'm at the same time getting kicked in the gut, having things happen that are incredibly hurtful, and I'm not supposed to react. I'm not supposed to have any feelings about that, right? So that's not good to do to yourself. That's not fair to do yourself. And people around me are reflecting back to me sort of this unfair situation that I need to be honest with myself about, because I'm asking myself to deal with some pretty tough stuff. I'm having some pretty challenging and tempting situations in my life. And to imagine that I'm going to get it right every time, and I'm never going to lose my self-control, and that other people can't step up, other people can't be the bigger person sometimes, and if I'm in a bad place, pick up the slack for me, that's really the scenarios that I'm looking for. And in order for that to be the case, I have to give it to myself. So it's taken about 6 hours. I'm giving myself that right now and just saying, you know what? You did the best you could today. You went into battle knowing you could get triggered, and sure enough, you sure did get triggered, and sure enough, looking back, my response was disproportionate to what was actually said. But from another side, hallelujah, that I can see that I have been harboring some very deep, dark anger. And it's not going to go away by myself. I need the supernatural help. I need the gospel. I need to understand that it's not, that I don't need to be perfect, that it's not about me being perfect. It's about me having the faith that what Jesus did for us was enough, and that we continually die to ourselves every day, but we're also resurrected through him, and that he can even resurrect this situation if I will bring it to him, if I will let him in, that he will resurrect me. And there will be a point where naturally I have more self-control, where naturally I don't get triggered. But until that day, he's right there with me. He's sanctifying me. He's reminding me that this is the human condition, that even when you know, hallelujah, the end result is that at some point we'll be past all this. At some point there's love. That going through betrayal is very difficult. Going through pain is incredibly difficult. And that what you're dealing with in your life is your cross. And that you can, you need to pick it up, but walk with Jesus. It's better than the alternative, I'll tell you that, which you could easily do. I think a lot of people are picking, like vacating their bodies, vacating their lives, just escapism. Even like maybe they're actually choosing to just go ahead and go the easy route and align with the fallen world and the matrix. And maybe that's the choice that they want to make for themselves. And so what are you going to do about it? How are you going to live? That's the only choice you really have. You can't do anything. You can't save the people around you. And you're not going to be perfect all the time in this world we live in right now. You just got to practice every day. Practice every day. Just like with music, this work is practice. And some days you're just not going to make it. Some weeks you're not going to make it. But as soon as you can, you got to pick yourself back up and get on the horse. So it feels like a lot of people are getting drunk lately. It feels like there's a lot more escapism. But I'm thankful that I had Jesus with me today. I'm thankful that sometimes it's hard to think of what I'm thankful for. But what I'm looking to do is raise my frequency, because I've spent a little bit of time. I've given myself some time here, about 6 hours, to really feel, to heal. And it's still there. I'm sure it's still going to be coming in waves. But I also think I can't, ruminate on this and let this take over, because in reality, it's very possible that the other people that I'm so guilty that I ruined their day or that I did this, they don't really care. And I think that's part of what's hard for very caring, deep people to recognize, is that there might be just not the same level of reciprocation, and that you don't waste your time, don't waste caring about people that are caught up in whatever they're caught up in, and instead focus on the open doors that God has for you. And if there's none, then focus on your relationship with him, because we are loved and we are not perfect. None of us are perfect, and truthfully, most of us are dealing with some pretty tricky stuff where we might not even be aware of, because the layers are so thick. So see if today you can work on that right relationship with God, which will ultimately result in a right relationship with yourself, and that you can use whatever happened to you today to do that.